Hi, this is JeanieHerold working with Ethan and Steven on the RPG Team Project, which is a role-playing game, and to demonstrate the classes and objects that I created. One includes the game engine, which is the main start to the program, the game squares that are used in the grid pane to create the board, the player object, the player input modal that collects the name of the player, choose profile modal that allows you to choose who you'd like to be, which player you'd like to be on the board, and a message modal if I need to leave them a message, a win modal, and as well as the RPG styles .css with JavaFX. You can use an external style sheet, which helps keep your buttons and backgrounds and various things cohesive in how they look across whichever class you have that attached to. Just makes it a little less intensive as far as applying styles to every single button, etc. And so I will start the program. And once you see the board here, this is the board made up of a grid pane, and it puts the message up here. The directional buttons here are disabled until the player hits start, and then you can enter in whatever name you want to play under, and then you can choose your profile that you'd like to be. It puts the player up here in this particular square, which is the grid panes are made up of columns and rows, much like an array. And as you go through, the player object is going to go through, and the player object actually has a method where you can go and get actually what column location and what row location they are to help figure out, as you hit the directional buttons, where the player is. And if the player steps on a square that has a puzzle or an object hidden, then that puzzle or object will open up in the stage of its own. As you traverse through there, the board, to start finding objects or puzzles. And this is one of Ethan's puzzles, which I'm assuming him and Steven have already explained what they do already. And you'll notice that that we've got it set up so that this is has a function that's like an init modality, so that you can't actually come back to the game board until you've interacted with this, to help keep the thing that we want you to interact with present in the front, so they don't get lost behind other windows. And if you leave that, then when you leave, the treasure box will have full opacity, and it'll be closed until you answer it. So you can come back to it. If you decide you can't answer that or you can't figure out the answer, you can just leave, and you can then go look for other items on the board. And the same thing with the items. This is one of Steven's items. You can choose to leave if you don't know if you want to pick that up or now, and it'll stay on the board. And when you come back to it, you have the choice again. But once you've actually decided that, and you make a choice, then it'll either, it'll go over here into your items picked up in according to whatever Steven has set up with that particular item. It may or may not affect your score, and then it comes off of the board. And then same thing with the puzzles. Now another puzzle's come up, so you have another treasure box on there, but it's not opened up yet, and your score hasn't been affected. And so let's say I don't want this particular item, and I say no, and I leave it on there. Then it stays on the board, and now that I've chosen not to keep it, you can't open up that pane and that stage and have the choice to get it anymore. Here's a puzzle, and so once I've actually solved a puzzle, the little treasure box actually opens up, and your score is increased at that point. And for demonstration purposes, we put it that you need 100 points to win. And we'll go ahead and say we're going to take that particular item, and then it comes down here. The main thing, one of the main things that I wanted to figure out was having the results actually happen when the stage closes for the others. Like Ethan's, these each have their own main, so I'm actually starting another main program from the board here, from the game engine .java class. And I would like to have figured out the event handler for when that closes for this happens. Right now, I have the functionality happening when you actually leave the stage. And so if I hit leave and then come off the stage, that's when something gets recorded. So that's one thing I would have liked to and probably will improve upon even after class, as far as figuring out that particular event functionality. And I will pause it here and go ahead and solve the puzzles. Now that I have solved the puzzles and got my score to be 100, and you can tell which puzzles you solved, which you left on the board, and a little modal comes up and says, "Congratulations, you win." So once that's closed out, I actually disable the controls so they can't continue going around the board. You've won and the game is over. And at that point, you can close out of the game. And that is my portion of our project. And I enjoyed working with Ethan and Stephen on this project.